How am I the only one? What's going on here? Wait, Matt and Ryan, seeing Maine. Matt and Ryan, Matt and Ryan. How come I don't see you? Oh, I don't see you. Add to the right. I don't see you.
I'm in.
But
I'm.
I'm like on the wrong profile.
Oh no.
How did I do this? Hold on. Profiles. Profile. It's just me. Okay, I want to stop this profile. Go to Matt. Oh man, I think I gotta stop it. No. Hold on. Let's just wing this. I want to get you. How come I can't get you on here?
You can hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, just on the screen. Okay. Well, listen, I can whistle the intro theme again.
Hold on. There's got to be a way to add you.
Yeah, the residuals check is in the mail or whatever it's called, right?
Yeah. New camera overlay. Guest Ryan. Okay, there you are. But you're now all I see is you.
Well, that's nobody wants that. Come on now.
Man, what the? Okay. No.
Oh, yeah, quite a few people in the chat. This is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can hear me. I think we're working on seeing me, but perhaps both of us would be nice.
Yeah. For some reason, all my let's just resize me and you, and we'll just do that. Can you see it?
Not yet. I think I'm on about 12 seconds. Oh yeah, I do have a unbranded hat today. Hey, there we go. Yes, I can see myself as a picture-in-picture at this point.
Yeah.
But I think I'm a little bit late. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
More of my living
now
room.
I see two of you.
Oh, that's required.
I don't know what's going on. Everything is all screwed up.
No one wants to see us anyway. What's
yeah.
new?
Well, not much. You're still noisy. Do people hear the noise?
I don't think anyone's complained about the noise yet. Let us know in the chat if the noise is too much. I'll see if I can point this mic away from the noise. Is that any better? Huh? All right.
Wow, there's a lot of people in the chat.
There is. They know that I've been doing my research this week. They're on top of it. Who's that in the background? Yeah, I think that's me in the background.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, I think I mean I can move myself, and now we see Ryan twice.
Someone said static. Let's see if the console.
You should only be once.
Oh shoot.
What happens if I make this go away? No, that's not what I want. I don't want that. I don't know what's going on. Well, now I don't know what I've done. Now I've got us both twice.
Unbelievable.
Hold on. If I move this guy away and this guy, okay. Well, that'll work, kind of. Let me get rid of these two. And we'll get rid of this.
Okay.
Okay, this kind of works.
Let's go. I think that looks fine to me.
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
That's kind of
odd. All right. So what's up?
Well, I've started finally using some of the applications that you've recommended. A ton. One of them is Ollama, and I got to be honest, like I use Ollama here and there to answer things, but I've been slowly starting to just keep it running on the Mac Studio on its own. The problem that I've got now is that I'm like loading and unloading models all the time as I try different things, and I'm getting into the thick of things of like using this stuff on a daily basis. But the crux of the problem is like Arc's got a browse with me or something like that. Is what it's called. Browse for you
Mm-hmm.
solution where Arc will do some research for you and then pull up some results and sort of summarize them, which is phenomenal. The problem being that it doesn't work on your desktop. So when you go to use the Arc browser on your desktop, you lose this functionality, and it feels like a superpower. And I
Mm-hmm.
love when there's something that's like really good and it works really well. I can't browse just on my phone all the time. So I resurrected an old iPad that I had given to my partner as a hand-me-down.
Mm-hmm.
I was using that for a bit as well, but it still felt a little bit clunky. So I started looking at ways of doing something similar on desktop, and I actually didn't get an answer. I ended up going down the path of Opera. Do you remember Opera from way back in the day? I don't recall.
Opera, yes.
Opera the browser. Okay, so I'm not going to recommend Opera. And then I tried Arc again on the
Right.
desktop to see. There's a couple shortcuts and things like that didn't work so well. I started playing with Brave again, and Brave
Mm-hmm.
actually has, I think it's called Leo AI,
Mm-hmm.
which will use a whole bunch of stuff. You can use DeepSeek if you want to. You can use it like the ChatGPT
Mm-hmm.
endpoint, that kind of thing. But I started thinking, like, if I'm summarizing what I'm browsing all the time, probably not a good idea to use in like something elsewhere.
Right.
Not that, listen, I don't browse too much on the internet that's bad, but generally speaking of, like, we were talking about Taobao shops and Switch backups and things like that, like, generally not something I want to be training AI on. So I
Right.
started to look at what could I use for local purposes, and it looks like, one, I didn't realize I could run DeepSeek DeepSeek R1 70B on the Studio with 64 gigabytes of memory.
Sort of.
Go ahead. Okay. Yep.
Well,
Good
it's
point.
not. It's the it's what they call the distilled version, and it's
Yes.
Llama or Quen.
Correct.
Right.
And I'm okay. So yeah, I'm glad I'm glad you mentioned that because the llama version I've been having pretty good luck with. I'm going to quote someone without remembering their name, but the quote I think was, "If LLMs are truly trained on the corpus of knowledge in human existence, that's probably on the web, then it should answer you in multiple languages. Let us just say that Llama distilled with Quen 2.5, in my experience, will at some point in time, I want to say devolve, but change to
Mm-hmm.
Mandarin, which makes it difficult for me to use.
Yeah.
Is my primary problem with the Quen distillation is that at some point in time over long sessions, it will typically go into Mandarin, and
Yeah.
I can't get out of it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I will say with Llama, though, that's yet to happen, which is fantastic.
Okay.
And if you're doing something like summarize this web page or look at this image and describe it or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this model is good. It's slow as heck on a Mac Studio. Like, it still
Mm.
takes about a second or two. Like, it's obvious that it's
Right.
waiting, it's sending a big payload. The payload takes a minute to
Right.
tokenize and serialize and send back. It takes a moment. Not great. The results, on the other hand, are about as good as Sonnet 3.5, which I've been finding increasingly to be the most accurate for the stuff I'm trying to do. Again, not
Mm-hmm.
a resounding recommendation for it, but in terms of what I've seen is pretty good. And I'm primarily comparing R1 and Sonnet 3.5 for different tasks,
Right.
but
Right.
I do find that they're, at least in terms of the answer, comparable. But I
Yeah.
started going down this path and realizing there's a lot of stuff under the hood. I hadn't seen Metatron was the first one I thought I found, which was like an LLM medical assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Not great, but I started to look at more and more different models. Like Lava is in there that I get to
Right.
try. Aya from Cohere, the
Mm-hmm.
translation,
Yep.
I'm super, super impressed with. And as a result, I started to try to make just a tiny throwaway app that would translate English to Japanese with
Mm-hmm.
Furikana, which is like it's like a subtitle or a subtext for some of the more
Okay.
complicated pictograms. It will give you like a phonetic pronunciation underneath, and
Mm-hmm.
then look it up's a little bit easier, that kind of thing. And okay, so I'm using Bun, which so I started thinking, okay, this is gonna be really easy in JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
We're in Cursor, like Cursor, help me out. Cursor's using Sonnet 3.5. It's spitting out TypeScript. Everything looks great, and then I realized, like, I can't read this at all, and I have no idea how this is working. And I started getting, the model to help me, like, explain this
Mm-hmm.
method for me, or like, what are we actually doing here? Do I know what type this is? A
Right.
lot of little questions here and there because it was confusing me. Imports were confusing me. And after a while, I think I just hit the wall and said to the LLM, I asked, is there possibly another like semantic way of presenting this that's not inscrutable to me as somebody who knows
Right.
Java, Python, done a bit of Perl, some PHP? that kind of stuff. And it came up with Bun, and I gotta say, it took a 200-line file and reduced it to 50 lines that were
Hmm.
absolutely readable by me. It kind
Mhm.
of looks like Go and Python and a little bit of JavaScript in there, but just enough to make it okay. It was actually amazing,
Well,
and not only
Bun is
that,
just TypeScript. It's just
well, the syntax is a little bit different, but yeah,
no, no,
apparently,
no.
and no,
It's just a different runner.
yeah,
It's just TypeScript.
it's
There's
absolutely
no,
TypeScript.
yeah,
I think I'm here. I'm here for whatever this concise TypeScript is. It's phenomenal. It's so much easier for me to use. So you're
it's
just
just
saying this is
TypeScript.
plain TypeScript?
There's no, you could take
Fantastic.
the, I mean, there's a few things that are Bun specific,
Okay,
that you could run with just any with Node.js.
fantastic.
It'll be slower. It'll be
Right,
significantly slower in Node.js versus Bun.
right,
It may or may not be a little bit faster in Dino,
right.
but then Bun has a few things that are specific to Bun, and those comparable things are specific to Dino as well. So Dino has their
Gotcha.
object,
Percent or
um,
yeah.
but and they are the two of them are just so much faster than what Node.js will do.
Gotcha. I feel like I just don't know TypeScript enough. I
Yeah,
certainly approved a bunch of TypeScript pull requests, so I
yeah,
should know it better. But it's legible. Like I can
yeah,
tell exactly what's going on. There's
yeah.
a so I started using Hono, which is kind of the
Hmm.
a front end. I guess it supports it,
Mm-hmm.
but Hono supports a bunch of stuff. Hono has, I think, a C object for context, but that was the only thing that tripped me up.
Mm.
It is surprisingly usable. At any rate, all I was trying to do is build a form that had
Yeah.
a button that would translate text, and then if it gave back kanji, make sure
Mm.
I like ran through another loop and added furigana on top of it, so
Right.
it's usable to me as a way to learn Japanese. And the Cohere model is fantastic.
Mm.
I 32B is what I was using. Is
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. It took about 20 gigabytes of VRAM, but all told, it was quite fast. The
Yep.
answers that I get back are they vary a little bit in terms of the translation because English to Japanese can be hard, but in general, the quality is very, very
Yeah.
high. Which this is a harder language to translate to and from. So I was
And
quite impressed.
does it just do Japanese and English, or does it do a bunch of other languages?
I think supports 16 languages.
Hmm.
I will
Okay.
pull them up. Uh,
So, what do you think is a good way to test, as somebody who doesn't speak
oh,
the other
shoot.
language? What's a good way to test a model that does
Yeah,
translation?
the traditional method, the Google Translate test, is from English to the language and the language and back. Is
Right.
typically like a general test. And what you can do is say, like, describe this sentence and then translate it, describe that sentence and translate it back and describe that.
Mm-hmm.
See if the descriptions all sort of match or the
Mm.
overall, the gist or the thrust of the sentence is the same, is
Mm-hmm.
what you're looking for. You need to use
In
both.
the same tool. So use the
I,
same tool to do both, or one in
yeah,
Google Translate and one in the other.
I would actually use. I find Llama. Is it 2 that I was using? Llama 2 surprisingly is not bad at translations. It's not great at Japanese. So if you're using something like French or Spanish, you're probably okay using your quote unquote human in the loop as like a another lesser AI. It's good enough. If you want
Is
something
Google
exact,
Translate considered to be good enough?
no. Not
So
even, I feel like
using
it fails
Google
French to
in
English
the
and English to French personally, but
using Google in the loop, is that, I mean, maybe it's Google's problem that screwed it up rather than.
fair enough. Yeah, yeah. If you're using Google in the group, what I end up doing is 2 passes. So I'll
Yeah,
do one pass and then do another one again using the same
yeah,
model. But I
yeah.
think, I mean, verifying that model with itself feels a little bit silly. But doing something like finding out where kanji is in
Mm-hmm,
model is very language aware, which is
mm-hmm.
just as a structure I find very interesting. And I'm saying I hate to personify, but it's difficult. There is intrinsic knowledge of how language works. It seems, at least in
Mm-hmm.
terms of my questions, like what is the subject of this sentence, that kind of stuff. Which again really surprised me. As somebody who is primarily learned languages by immersion, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of blind spots for me. So it's good for me to be able to use something like this. It's blowing me away, like as an actual learning tool that I can build for myself quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to use Bun. You can probably do this in Python. In fact, you can do it in command line as well.
Sure.
You don't need the GUI in Hono, but it is quite interesting to me to see, one, how quickly I can develop a quote unquote application that would use something like an LLM backend that's pluggable. Like I believe is also available on Bedrock, for example, if you want to run this in the cloud. And I think Amazon's got a whole bunch of models as well for translations that you could use. I just found this one to be
Hmm.
quite good. The aha moment for me was being able to tailor a language so the programmers need. Like, hey, I don't understand the syntax. Can I write it in something else?
Mm.
It was pretty cool. I asked it to help me write it in Crystal, just as an example. Crystal is one
Hmm.
of those newfangled languages that I look at because I do kind of like the syntax, and it was able to take from one programming language to another, which I also
Hmm.
find very interesting.
Yep.
Again,
Yep.
this is in Cursor using Sonnet
Sure.
3.5. I don't think anybody would say that it's not great, but it does feel like a pretty good stack.
Yeah.
I did compare it to Windsurf and not yet to Codium. What I found with Windsurf is that it was slower and it
Mm.
felt like the interaction, there's just more clicks to get stuff done. So in Cursor, there's a chat mode, but there's also, I want to say it's like an editing mode basically. So
Right.
the mode next to chat where it will
Right.
replace all your files for you and
Right.
save files. So when you go to run it, it's not bad. The other is I for some reason I didn't understand that you could run JavaScript in a way where it would reload on save, which is
Hmm.
an amazing
Yeah.
developer lifecycle loop for you when you're programming stuff. So you don't have to open the URL again, refresh the page, start, stop the server, all this stuff. So when you remove 7 steps every time you change a piece of code, it's non-trivial. You end up
Right.
essentially thinking faster, and because of that, you're working on more features and
Right.
because of that, more full features.
It's interesting that you say that you didn't like Windsurf because it was slower. My
Yeah.
complaint about Cursor is that it's so much slower than Windsurf.
Oh, interesting. Now,
Or one of my complaints. There were a bunch of complaints I have about Cursor. It
yeah,
it
Cursor
feels
takes a while to load.
kludgy versus
It
more
does.
seamless
It does.
with
It
Windsurf.
certainly does. It took a while to load the first time. I think some of that's down to my extensions, and it tries to
Hmm.
import from Studio Code, and it's like trying to access a bunch of folders because it pops up on a bunch of security warnings. The other is, as it's going, it looks like it wants plugins to be present in the
Hmm.
editor, and sometimes they are not there. It will
Hmm.
throw errors because they expected the plugin to be there and it's not
Right.
there. So
Yeah.
I went doing. I ended up saying like, hey, what if I want to launch this in Kubernetes? Let's pretend it's a 3-tier, 4-tier architecture. What's that look
Right.
like? Functions, that kind of thing. It choked on the YAML, and then it tried to get my Minikube extension working again, which is like
Hmm.
I disabled it, and a whole bunch of other weird things.
Hmm.
Which I mean, I get what it's doing. It's like letting your intern use your IDE,
Right.
which
Right.
I want to say I would never do.
Yeah.
Like you can use your own laptop. That's great. Please don't get your I don't know Cheeto fingers all over my keyboard here. That'd be great. But I guess for both Windsurf and Podium and Cursor, I do like the fact that the LLM's integrated into the IE. In
Yeah.
fact, there's one feature in Cursor that I like. I just don't find the implementation that great. It's the quick fix one. So imagine you're coding along and something's got that squiggly red underline under it, and you think, this seems weird. You can right click it, hit quick
Yep.
fix, and it will use ChatGPT. I think it's 4.0 mini. And it's quite fast. It's often wrong, or maybe 90% of the time it's wrong. So it will think that there's something wrong with pluralization in the file, or just
Mm.
basically misunderstanding the goal of what you're doing. That being said, I think for at least Cursor and Windsurf, I'm not sure about Codium, you can add a file, like an
Hmm.
instruction file saying like these are the goals of this.
Right.
Please don't rewrite this in PHP for me or
Right.
anything like
Right.
that. Please stick to this
Yeah.
language. I've
Yeah, they
been
both have a
developing for 10
rules
years.
file. So it's Windsurf
Yeah,
rules or Cursor rules. And they
exactly.
both have the same function. And it's generally, you give it your build stack, your what is your technology stack? What
Right.
are the you always want uh, to create a GitHub commit each time you do something, and the commit
Oh, that's a
messages
good one.
should be a certain format.
Ah,
And so it will stick to that format. Here's the schema that you've used in the database, and it'll for the most part stick to that.
nice. You
Um,
can define your business logic too. That's pretty cool. I
yeah,
didn't think of that.
yeah,
Okay. The commit that one that right there is actually going to save me so much time because
yeah,
I got the quote unquote app running just by throwing spaghetti at the wall for a while, and then I couldn't figure out how to get back to where I was
right,
because undoing in Cursor is non-trivial.
yeah, yeah,
It could take 30 undos to undo one suggestion, basically.
yes,
Depending if you're working on compose mode or chat mode. In the compose mode, I think it's called, it can actually do a lot of changes at once, and
yep,
getting back to a revision is difficult. The other is, and this isn't a plug, but I was trying to use Datadog, and I did say, suggest a monitoring vendor. I didn't say which one. You told me Datadog was available, so I was like, okay. So you didn't know this, so let's set up logging. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Very, very interesting in terms of the cutoff of the model that you're using and where it may stop. So because Datadog's like a third-party vendor
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
does change all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the APIs, some of the steps, some of the functionality was removed. Anyway, it started using Winston Datadog logger as opposed to the Winston logger
Oh,
with Datadog, and like it
right.
just happened to be this weird. It's not that it didn't work. It's just that
Right.
it was not like a community. It
Right.
didn't have the same push behind it as Winston did. So I ended
So,
up using Winston instead of Winston Datadog as an
right.
example. But there are a couple of weird wrinkles because of that.
So I don't know about Cursor. I know Cursor has a lot of the documentation for a lot of the most popular things
Right.
available. I don't know how. I haven't looked at it recently. Are you able to point to other documentation?
Yes, and in fact, I was not. But that was kind of that's my next thing. It's like
Yeah.
one, wasn't aware of Bun 1.2, which is fairly recent,
Mm-hmm.
and it has a number of interesting things.
Yeah.
I'd like to pretend to understand, but basically, feature parity with Node, I think, is what it's going for. It's at about 90%, but
Yeah.
it's out of the lion's share of that between 1.1 and 1.2, if I understand it correctly. The other is that wasn't necessarily aware of PG Vector as opposed to
Mm.
something like Pinecone or Alleviate.
Right.
Again,
Right.
no harm, no foul. That's totally fine. And it wasn't aware that Postgres support is native to Button, whereas I think before it required like an adapter.
Okay.
It was like SQL something,
Yeah.
SQL X, something like that.
In Windsurf, you can say @docs and then point it to any documentation site, and it'll pull that in.
That is fantastic.
But
I think for Cursor, you have to have a local copy or something like that. It's
yeah,
not.
but if that documentation relies on JavaScript to build out the documentation, it's not going to see it.
Oh,
So it's got to be the HTML that's in there, not built at client side. So if it's using something like, what's one of the, there's a popular API kind of builder tool, and it's all basically the UI is kind of built out on the client, and there's nothing in the on the page, and it just doesn't see it, which is frustrating. And I found that with a lot of these tools, you'll give it like, here's some instructions. In Cursor rules or Windsurf rules, here's some instructions, and it will keep to those instructions, but it'll often forget, and you have to remind it. And so you always have to keep looking at the code that it generates to ensure that it's adding. I was using, I use a database called NoCodeDB that I self-host. And it kept wanting to go back to version 1 of the API, which they stopped using 2 years ago, and instead using version 2. And I would keep reminding it, here's the instruction, here's what you want to do. It's like, okay, great, I understand that now. And then like 10 steps later, let me start using, the endpoint's wrong. Let me fix everything. It's like, no. And so it's really important with both of these tools to, this is not a tool just in your IDE. This is another person that you're working with. So
right.
you better stick to a good GitHub or Git process. Or you're committing and you're working on one specific feature, get that done, push that, and now you can work on something else. Don't work on 5 different things, because you're going to make 4 steps forward, 3 steps back,
Exactly.
1 step forward, 8 steps back, and you like, I would try it maybe 4 requests, and if it's not going in the right direction, I stop, I roll everything back, and I start again. And usually the second time it gets it better.
Gotcha. Okay. One of the things that it kept failing on was the models that were available in Olama. And the reason I mentioned Llama 2 is because it's one of those specific cases where I said, no, like Llama 3.3,
Right.
70p is
Yeah.
like, it's here, it's running, it's ready to go. Please don't grab Llama 2. It kept grabbing Llama 2. That's okay. Like it's actually pretty good. It's pretty small. At one point in time, I grabbed Mistral for some reason. Again, also pretty small. Mistral Lattice is fine. but definitely not the same quality in terms of translations. Like just saying, like, no, this is the
Yeah.
wrong one. There is no GPT 4.0 mini. There's only GPT 4.0. A bunch of these just, things that are
Yeah.
wrong. Primarily around things like, versions, models,
Mhm.
model versions, a whole bunch of stuff like that. It's not the end of the world. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of videos that will show that you can use these tools to build a impressive UI, or maybe even an impressive iOS app or Android app, and you don't need to know anything. And that is just, you might get lucky,
Yeah, I
but
can't.
chances are you're not.
No, yeah, you need to know what's going on.
You need to know. Yeah.
I've watched a couple videos where they compare this to more like a good product manager would
Yeah.
give like an intern good steps, like good simple first steps, and build on
Hmm.
those. And it feels like that. Like you can't just
Yep.
say implement this feature. It's like for this feature, we'll need a proper form. It'll need to
Yep.
be centered. You really need to start with basics, and the button
Yep.
should do this, and like.
And
Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I think one thing that I found incredibly important to do is, the first few times I would say, okay, I want to build an app that does this, 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 and I list like three things, and it starts building it out. It's like, yeah, okay, and now I wanted to be able to show this type of thing as well, and it's like, okay, it builds that out. Well, actually, I want to do it slightly different, and now it has
First
to roll
product manager
back. It's
ever.
like, no, 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 don't do that. Have a, write a document up front that says, here's
Right.
what I want to do, go through all the steps, and and have that conversation not with the AI but with your document. And it's like, oh wait, no, I want to move that around, so let me adjust it so that it all makes sense. I've got one document that says, here's what I want in my application. Yeah, I think, oh, I got to change one more thing. Okay, do that and hand it off to the AI, and it's so much better, so much more effective.
Yeah, I wish we had this talk before. I
Yeah.
wasted like 6 hours. One of the things I started off with was like a completely different app idea, and as a result,
Yeah.
4 hours later
Yeah.
into the session, it decided we were working on the first app
Yeah.
again. Wiped
And
all the logic, which is fine. It's not the end of the world. Throwaway
right.
app. Having that document and being grounded in it, I think, would
Yeah.
have been.
But even with that, I spent some time with the code afterwards and just like turn off all these features and
Right.
like going through it and realize it's created like three functions to do the same thing from different perspectives. Like, why do we have in fact it might even be the same name. And so VS Code was saying there's a problem here because you've got three copies of the same. It's like, what? um, and same type definitions twice, and there were all sorts of things like that where it
I
was,
yeah. I
yeah,
think I had 3 loggers at the end of one session.
yeah,
Like I do not need to log this.
yeah,
Replace this. I'm so sorry. The
and it
other,
was trying to log everything,
yes.
and so it was like, okay, let me clean up this logging. This is crazy. It was slow because it was doing so much logging.
Yes. Now,
Yeah,
did you try like a test, or have you tried a test driven development kind of approach? 'Cause I actually had some luck with that. It's just tedious.
yeah, and but I'm not really sure that if it's the best thing to have the AI build the test, because if it
Right.
does, then it's going to, oh, well, let me fix the test to be right with my new change, which has just broken everything. I'll fix the test so that it looks like it's working. Uh-uh.
Like it absolutely were ascertained true.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
a couple times, like all the tests failing, I'll just that's true. Like this, no, this is absolutely what an intern would do. Having seen this before, this is
Yeah.
absolutely not cool.
Yeah.
And then you end up instructing it like, hey, you can't just write tests to pass, like
Right. Right.
test code. And then you're going back like, oh man, I need to go back to my initial goal here.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
before we write code, we should like assume that we need to write a test, and if there's a
Right.
test, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The
And
other was,
that's a great thing to add to that rules file.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was like define that up front.
Yeah.
Like, don't implement
This is
features to pass the test.
I have all these things kind of like in my mind because I just wrote the script for a video that
Oh,
goes over this exact thing.
oh, impeccable timing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say that there aren't a lot of good, at least for Cursor, there aren't a lot of good videos, and I looked at a couple for Windsor. They're fine. I don't want to, because if you search them, you'll find the same YouTubers I found.
Yeah.
They're fine. They're just often like a 12-minute video that's not in depth, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of like
The
long, drawn out intros, and it's useless.
the best one I've found so far is a guy named his name's like Yifan or Yifan, I think it is.
That
He
sounds
is
familiar.
much more pro Cursor than he is Windsurf, but he had a interview with the Windsurf team like in the last week or so.
Yeah, this is the one. Chinese.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
his videos are great, and everything he says about Cursor totally applies to Windsurf and vice versa, and he goes back and forth between both. Um,
The first one
I
I
think his
found,
video is great.
he had bitten his tongue, and he said, "Sorry, I hadn't watched any other videos, and I thought he just talked like that all the time." But it legit sounded like he was missing a bit of his tongue. I was like, "It's listenable, it's not bad." And then I realized, like, no, he actually did bite his tongue. It doesn't sound
Right.
like this at all normally. It's way more.
So,
Luckily,
mm.
yeah. Oh, interesting. Lots of comments today.
Yeah, lots of comments.
Yeah, debugging is lots of logging. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I will admit to being that type of programmer who has
yeah.
a bunch of print statements. Still,
Well,
still to the
if you're going to be using um, something like TypeScript or JavaScript, and you want to do some console debugging, take a look
Yep.
at Console Ninja.
Yeah.
It's a tool by the same folks that created Wallaby and Quokka. Um, and it's really cool. Wallaby, or so I think it's Quokka. One of the tools is basically one's a kind of a testing framework and tool set, but the other one is will go basically show you, like if you set a value, a constant to a value or a variable to a value, and that value changes, you can have like to the right you see the actual live value of that variable. And then there's if you're using TypeScript, that doesn't work with Dino, and I think it might also have some problems with Bun as well. But there's another tool that's free, whereas they cost money, and actually have a subscription to it. But it's really annoying that it doesn't work with Dino. But there's another tool that's totally free that's called TypeScript Worksheet. And it's written by a YouTuber who does a lot of TypeScript stuff, and it works really well. It's not as great as whichever one, Quokka or Wallaby, but it's pretty cool.
Very interesting. Yeah, and it says it runs in Dino, Node.js,
Yeah.
and Bun. Very interesting.
Documentation's super light.
I'm seeing that.
Yeah, but it's
The
really
reading is
cool.
pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, I guess I'm at this point now where if it's TypeScript, is this the syntax I'm using? Like I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
I really don't have any. It feels typed. It looks about right. The tabs and everything kind of line up to where I expect. There's a bit about is it like open bracket, curly bracket, or together, which I find a little bit weird as a Java programmer, but it's not.
My big reason why I still use Dino I switched to Bun for a while for some of my code samples, and then
Okay.
I've switched back to Dino, and it's all about compiling. So one of the things that you can do with Bun more recently, they've added it pretty recently, like in the last 6 months to a year, was the ability to compile to a executable, so that you don't need any Bun or anything Node.js installed on your system, and it'll just work. But getting that to work so that I could, on one system, build for Windows and for Mac and for Linux was very problematic. And so I would follow their instructions, and most of the time it wouldn't work even on my system. It would complain about dependencies that were missing. And maybe they fix that. I don't know. But Dino has been able to do this for 2 years, and it's always been flawless, and it just works. And so I set up, a GitHub action. In fact, when I was still at Datadog, I was building tools for building out training stuff, and I was always using Dino, and I would be able to create a GitHub action that built it for Linux and Windows and Mac, and people could just download the tool that they needed, and without needing to install anything with Dino or anything like that.
That is really cool.
So
Yeah, the portable binary is like that.
Yeah.
Is It's been one of those wishes for a long time
Yeah,
for programmers. But yeah, glad to hear that the
yeah,
dream is alive. I still
yeah.
remember making Flash.exe or like Flash. What was it, DMG apps in
Hmm,
Mac
hmm.
Video Flash back in the day. I thought I was a wizard. Yeah, so there's some comments in the chat about Dino. I've heard a lot of good things. I also
Yeah.
like the logo. I'm here for the
So
Q3
Dino
look.
is the one that's made by the guy who created Node,
Right.
whose name I've forgotten. Who's it?
And Bun, I don't
Bun is somebody else.
some other. I'm trying to find.
And they will both say that they're faster than the other, and depends on. I mean, Bun is
They're both
faster than
very
the
fast.
other
Yeah.
if you do their specific thing. For most other things, I think generally people have seen that Dino's a little bit faster, but it's like such a tiny difference that who cares? The speed doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I brought it up in our stand up today, and one of the serverless people was interested because I think for them, Dino or what have you, smaller runtimes are better because it means that it's less resource intensive when it comes to a function. So that part I get it. Be it
Hmm.
Dino, Run, or what have you. I hear is there Vite as well? Is another one
Yep,
that people
yep,
are using. Heard of that? Vite being something fast, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Assuming this is French for speed. It does look like that's the area where we're at now. Is we're optimizing for things that launch and go away quickly. So
Hmm.
we'll have to make that smaller and smaller.
But the thing that I've been Ryan Dahl, thank you. Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Um, so the thing that I was building um, with Windsurf recently was just a tool for. I think I mentioned it a couple of times. I was going to make it into a video, and then I've kind of been pushing it off for a few weeks. Um, was uh, was I've convinced somebody to try Dino.
Exactly.
Perfect.
It's like the
Um,
tech evangelism can't die. It's
it
still
It was a tool that would parse through all the logs in Olama. So on the Mac, I'm not sure what it's like
listen.
on Windows or
Don't steal
Linux.
my app idea. Patent pending. We talked about that here.
Well, so on with on the Mac in the logs, it records all the logs unless if you don't prune the logs. I think you can.
You
There's a
can
way to
filter.
do that, but it
Yeah.
will like keep everything. So I've got every Olama run since I was like the third person to install Olama
Oh
on the
wow.
planet.
Okay, well,
So I mean, I've got like a huge amount of history there. It's something about 3 to 4 million lines of logs for
mm,
Olama. And so I built a tool using Rust. I don't know any Rust. I don't know no Rust. And I
I
built it in
what
Rust.
is antithetical to your beliefs about programming. But go on.
Well, I
I love
think
that.
my my idea there is that you should know about programming, about the programming concepts, and it doesn't really matter the language. I don't know
Right.
the details of the language, and I was able to build this tool. And what's amazing is it will run the Olama API to get the list of models that it knows about, plus also parse all the logs in my 3 million lines
Right.
of Olama logs, and that Rust app is up and running I compiled it, and it's up and running in, I don't know, tenth of a second after,
Yeah.
scanning through 3 million lines. And it's like, and it's
It,
so useful. But,
massively
um,
parallel is one of the
but
things I've noticed about Rust.
this
It's quite
morning, this morning I thought, well, I really want to do this video, but I'm just building this CLI app. Let me
mm,
build a UI, a GUI app instead. Let's
well,
use Taurus or Tori instead
okay.
of Electron. No experience with it, never used it. In 20 minutes, I had converted that from a CLI app to a GUI app, and it's great. And I can delete models based on, delete the models that I haven't touched in 4 months that are, 50 gigs. Um, just delete it. And
Uh,
it's awesome.
Tauri, Tauri.
Yeah.
Very cool. I've
So
not
it's
heard
an
of it.
alternative to Electron.
Very, very
And
interesting.
it's built in Rust, but you can run the front end using whatever you want, so TypeScript. And so this one is using TypeScript for all the front end stuff. Um, I'm not sure what I'm using, if it's like Svelte or what. I don't actually know what's, because I don't know any of this stuff.
I
And
suck at
but
front end. So
the
it's like, hey, it works.
the actual engine of it is actually also running in Rust.
Very
So it's TypeScript talking to Rust, and it works really really well.
fantastic. Yeah, I'm still here for Toml versus YAML. I do actually really like the tabs. Tori looks really neat. I was looking at Ratatouille, which is similar but not
Hmm.
the same for TUI applications. So text UI.
Hmm. Okay. I
I
don't know
think
about
it's
Ratatouille.
called. I think it used to be called TUI-RS or TUI-RS.
Hmm.
In case you were looking at this years ago,
Okay.
it did change names, but it's basically like a really nice ncurses plus kind of
Mm-hmm.
app.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite cool. Again, as somebody who really likes that fast kind of terminal, this quote unquote GUI, I thought it was
Right.
quite interesting. But being able to build a menu in the terminal was something that
Yeah.
it seemed like I could do quite easily. Having it just looked like a quick little menu. It's
Yeah.
very impressive. I think as somebody who can do maybe more on the systems backend or glue kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Front end's really not my forte. I
Yeah.
was able to give Sonnet the prompt saying like, "Hey, could you build something that's maybe more Dribble like Dribble with
Yeah.
3D,
Yeah.
the kind of I would say the de facto standard of like newer GUIs that look nice, and it
Right.
built something really nice,
Yeah.
like the Dribble alternative. And of course, it didn't work at all, but it looked nice. But it gave me kind of that hint, like, oh, it could look like this. Like your font
Right.
can
Right.
be 30 point on a browser, and it's fine if it's just a text box. But yes, I I
There's
think
a
for me, yeah, go ahead.
there's a library out there of components. I think mostly for Tailwind,
Owen, yep.
um, called something like 21st.dev or something like that. 20 is it 21st.dev? Um, yes. So UI components. And what's interesting about this, if you browse the components and find something you really like, you can either just download the code for it,
Oh wow,
or the prompt to give to Windsurf or Cursor to generate your site using that component.
what? Oh, I'm glad I mentioned that little tangent because this is phenomenal. This is kind of what I was looking for because
Yeah,
that's what I'll do. I'll browse Dribble and be like,
right.
that's a good idea. That's a good
Now this
idea.
is specifically using,
With
I think Tailwind, and so you
Tailwind.
have to be okay. I mean, some people don't like Tailwind.
Why would that?
Um, huh?
I was using Water, I think, Water
Okay.
CSS, which I had never seen before, but it seemed fine. Why would
Yeah.
people not like Tailwind?
I think the fact that you're declaring the styles kind of in line in the HTML within the uh, within the component, and some
Yeah,
people think, well, you give the component a name and then you do all the styling in CSS, and never the two shall meet.
this is why I mentioned PHP because Hono kind of felt a little bit like it was
Yeah,
spit out right HTML and stuff. I'm okay with it, but I also understand if you've not dined on the lasagna or lasagna slash spaghetti that was
right.
PHP back in the day. I mean, you might not like inline SQL and stuff like that. I get it.
Yeah. I was playing around with Hono for a while. I was also playing around with there's another one for Rust that actually hasn't really done much recently for as like a static site generator.
Right.
Um, but I stumbled onto, I don't know, I mean I've seen it mentioned for a while. I just never thought about it. I finally looked at Astro, and Astro is so awesome.
Really?
It is the, if you don't, Astro is, what I like about it is it's just so freaking simple to understand and to use, especially if once you have, I my website used to be based on a few years ago on Gatsby. Um, and one of the benefits of Gatsby and some other tools are, you can have multiple collections of things. So blog posts and videos and notes and whatever else you want to have on your site, and
Right.
can kind of easily consume those different collections. But it was always a little, I mean, sort of easy, but not easy in a way that when you look at it 6 months later to update something, that you're going to remember anything about what you did.
Right.
And I find that with Astro, it's the first one that's easy enough that it's like, even a few weeks later or a few months later, it still makes sense and it's really easy to follow. So I'm really digging Astro.
It actually looks really cool. Very neat. I also find it interesting that they have a store, and I'm not saying this in a disparaging way. I do find sometimes if there's like a paid theme out there that I can use and just like
Mm. Mm-hmm.
modify a little bit here and there, like if the license allows it,
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I'm not pay to win on the video game side, but
Right.
on the dev side, if I can shoot somebody $5 and they can
Yeah.
like give me a look that's opinionated that looks all right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for it. Like if all I have to do is update a few things, I will
Yep.
absolutely do that. That's really cool. And obviously there's a bunch of free and open source stuff as well in their teams, but a couple of these are quite nice. Very interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah, this is fantastic because
yeah.
honestly, a lot of the times what I'm building are just little CLI,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not doing
just
anything
one two arguments.
serious.
Yeah, yeah,
I
and
recently I was doing something that was actually quite involved, and so I did a stream on Thursday and on Friday,
mhm.
using this tool that I was building, and I'm still kind of building it out. The idea is, whenever there's a new model,
Yep.
how do you assess whether this model is any good versus
Right.
older models?
Right.
Um, and you can rely on benchmarks, but benchmarks, um, they're open source. People, all the model makers know the questions and can kind of game the system. Um, and so just my own opinion. I just want to look at my opinion of these models,
Right.
and I don't want to have a lot of questions because I want to be able to kind of grade it on a stream. But I want to grade it so that I remember the grades for next
Right.
time around. So I've decided to, I came up with like 10 or actually about 12 different questions. Um, and then well, actually 6 to 9 criteria, depending on the type of question. And they all have 0 to 3 points. And so go through them all and grade them based on that. And so I just created a simple app that would, specify the model. And so I was using DeepSeek R1 671 billion parameter model, so the full thing,
Yep.
um, because I can,
Ken.
um, and then grading that, and then the goal is, so all that goes, all the data, all the grades, all the runs go into that NoCodeDB database. But then I can have another process on the back end that runs every few minutes, pulling that data out, generating markdown documents, and pushing it to my website, so that it all is sort
Very.
of live and always updated, but static. Um, and yeah, so that was the thing I was building, and it's kind of complicated,
Mhm.
especially when Cursor or Windsurf forgets what the schema is over and
Yep.
over again. But so that was what I was building somewhat recently.
That's really cool.
Um,
I feel like I took the training wheels off, I guess, with Cursor compared to something like a Copilot, which and zero disparagement. I think Copilot's recently come out with a
mhm.
tool that's
Yep.
similar to this, or a way of working similar to this, which I really should try before uh, before flinging stuff at it. But at this point in time, it just feels night and day.
Yeah.
Even between like Windsurf, which I thought was also good, just a little bit
Yep.
different, to Visual Studio Code. It felt to me like it was Tab 9 because I did
Yeah.
enjoy the way Tab 9 worked in Visual Studio Code compared to Copilot. And it
Yep.
feels like it's Copilot plus Tab 9 plus a few other things on top with different ways or different modes of
Yeah.
working. Because sometimes I want to ask, like, what does this method actually do?
Right.
Or, like, why do I need 5 files? Like, could I
Yeah.
run this one file? That'd be great. Some of those questions I think are really interesting to go through with a language model. Sometimes I just need intelligence in typing.
Yeah.
I don't need all of that. I just want you to suggest the next line. One thing I found very interesting in dealing with Datadog, and I'm sure this applies to other things like OpenAI, which it also happened with,
Hmm.
is API keys and wanting to
Mm.
type ahead my API keys. Not
Mm.
good. Or like replace them, or do a
Right.
whole bunch of other stuff. Cool. In fact, it did seem to know the Datadog client ID and secret type, which I
Mm.
found interesting. So it knew that one started with pub, for example, and would have like
Mm.
numbers after it, and the other one would be hyphenated, which I also thought was pretty neat.
Hmm.
Did not understand that the variables might need parentheses. Sorry, not parentheses, quotes when hyphenated.
Mm.
It's like an easy one, but still, like
Yeah.
if you're gonna internalize all these things and make it part of your corpus, perhaps the tokens for the quotes are important. I get where it would fail, but also like I don't want somebody else's API key in this
Well,
course.
Windsurf knew that I was putting them in a .env file
Okay,
and knew not to touch it. I was going to rely on it, but I'm not going to touch it. In
not the
fact,
case with cursor,
in
and
fact,
not create the
with
file.
if anything is added to your git ignore,
Yeah.
it is also unable to see it.
Okay, so the second time I touched the env file, I was surprised, well, impressed that one of the suggestions was like, oh, hey, you shouldn't put these in your code. There should be an env file. Like, yeah, I mean, we did that last step. Cool. Also, as a result, you should add it to your git ignore file. I was like, yeah, high
Yeah.
five intern. You know what I mean? If this
Yeah.
is somebody
Yeah.
straight out of college or is like their first internship and they do a couple more, like this is an aha moment. Like, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, definitely ignore this file. Please don't commit it to GitHub.
Right.
That would be great. All this stuff. And then you're right. I think after that, maybe it did stop playing around with it, but prior to that, it definitely was. So
Yeah.
good point. I didn't touch that.
Hmm.
If you could, for one moment, I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to break the fourth wall here and do something. Is that all right?
Okay.
All right. So I've got something to recommend this week. It's a little bit abnormal for this podcast, perhaps, but I have a camera. What I'm going to do is take a photo of you with this
I was
camera.
a little worried where you're going with this.
Oh, what's he going to talk about?
Not that kind of podcast.
So for those of you listening, I've got a gray camera that's new to me that I'm going to take a photo with. One moment.
Oh.
And that's the sound it makes. Okay, now the reason I'm doing this on video is because it's got a hand crank. Do you remember the hand crank from the Playdate? Why?
Yeah,
Why
horrible.
I don't understand. Oh, sorry. You actually have to go into Play to look at the photo first, and then crank the handle to print it because it's like a digital camera with something glued on the front and in the back. You can see it's animated going through. I think you only have to do it twice. It's at the top.
This is so stupid.
Oh, okay. Yes, and in an age where generative AI is taking over most artistic domains, the only true medium left is Instax, I guess, for printed photos. You can use this to print photos from your phone as well. You can just use it as a printer. So I
Okay.
think the Instax photo that I'm holding in the air, folks who are listening, it is no longer like some sort of badge of authenticity or anything like that. You can totally reprint them if you want. One of the things that would drive you up the wall, which I think is maybe romantic, is that you can't share the photo. You can't download the photo I just took on a digital camera to your phone unless you print it. It's like, that's a choice. If you get a micro SD card, you can sync it with your computer or what have you. But with the app, you can't get access to any photos on the Instax Wide Mini. Sorry, Instax Wide Evo? Yes, Wide Evo, without printing first, and then you have access to a roughly 5 megapixel image, which includes a hard-coded Instax border around it. Yeah. It's opinionated, I will
Yeah. I've seen recently a few videos about, I guess it's been a long line of printers, but the Canon selfie printers.
That's what I use at home, yeah.
Okay.
It's quite good.
And they're like, I mean, it looked, the videos I saw by Healy, I think is the guy's name. He's a photographer in like somewhere in the UK. And the photos were I was like, this is not perfect, but it's really good.
For proofs, they are absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So I may, a lot of times, if I'm adding grain or upping the contrast or something like that in Photoshop, what looks good on your screen might be quite a bit different than what you're printing, especially when it comes to things like black point or darkness levels or how light things are. Because your screen's probably got, like, the contrast is bumped all the way up, the brightness is bumped up, and it is very, very punchy. Whereas in a print, you might want different values.
Right.
What I love about the selfie is I can quickly take the original shot and the one that I played around with and throw them through the printer, look at them side by side, and just dial it back a little bit so it's not as obvious. I'm usually adding grains is the most obvious one, just to because I don't want to edit skin. I'll just add grain on top of it, call it a day. It's actually quite good. The other is that it's so convenient and it pairs so quickly in our household that printing is actually quite easy. So I can turn it on. My phone will recognize that there's a new Wi-Fi access point that it knows about. It sets as a priority, so it will pop onto that first. Open up the app, and then you can just. It can hop on your own wireless network. Ignore all of that. So it knows that it's on. Your iPhone will at least find I think it's called an Air printer,
Hmm.
and then you just send it photos. It is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah,
And
and it's I mean, because you're buying the ink or whatever, and it comes with the paper,
yeah,
so you have bought 66 prints
yeah,
in one packet,
yes,
and it comes out to about it. I think for my local CVS that prints out photos,
right,
it's like 10 cents cheaper per print to get the selfie.
right.
I mean, plus the
However,
printer.
one thing they don't tell you is that the photo you're taking is probably 4:7, I think, as opposed to four by
Okay.
six, so it's cropped a bit. iPhone's even longer, and the
Mm,
selfie has little break off edges
yeah.
as a result to perforate. Pros and cons. The pro is it'd
Yeah.
be great if you didn't have to do that. It'd
Yeah.
be awesome. The pro is, of course, that your iPhone photo may actually take up quite a bit of that space, and
Hmm.
not breaking off the edges is maybe more convenient, especially if you're trying to frame or something like that. It's quite
Right.
nice. The con is like I wish I could buy ink instead of the paper, because I know that like it's always magenta or cyan. Like I know there's
Mm,
some left, and I know I'm just throwing out these like
right.
precious pigments into the trash, what have you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will agree though, just walking into a store and grabbing these two together are great.
Yeah.
Word of caution: they're pretty expensive. Do not buy the I don't know, Amazon ones. The ones that look legit that aren't. Be very careful.
Oh, really?
I buy them retail because yeah, there's a couple
Oh,
generations, so you
okay.
easily get confused. The other is that there are definitely knockoffs of both
Yeah.
the ink and paper. So get them together as what you were saying, and then
Yeah.
you're good to go. Yeah,
I
you
actually
get a lot
experienced
more.
something similar um with the roller. We have our robot vacuum is a Dream L10 Ultimate. I don't know, something. We've had it a
Mhm.
couple of years, and the roller, the main roller for it is like kind of expensive. For I mean, it's not super expensive. It's like $25, but then you can find them on Amazon for like four for $10. And it's like,
Oh,
let's get that.
you
Except
try it
they
anyway.
don't
Yeah.
actually fit. And by the time you notice, like it's past the whatever the return is, like, damn it. I've got four of these things that don't fit that need like a Dremel to like shave off one part of it.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of these Temu surprises on Tony and
Oh yeah.
Ryan, where it's generally something that's very small. It's like they bought a couch and it comes in the right size packaging, but it's still like it's minuscule, like I don't know, 3-4 inches by 2 inches kind of thing. But it came in the right size,
Oh
like
my god.
multiple boxes. It came in 3 boxes, so it looks like a sectional, but it's
Uh-huh.
actually like each one.
Wow.
It's awful. So bad. So bad.
Wow.
Yeah, these scams are getting more and more clever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there are dupes. I'm sure they work. I just
Yep.
for photos for something like this, like I wouldn't chance it. It's a bit
Yeah.
more expensive in Canadian, maybe
Yeah.
75 cents a print, but it's still like it's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my recommendation. Instax
Okay.
Wide Evo. Go out and buy it. I had to pre-order it. It's sold out, but if you can find it, I think it's actually
Hmm.
quite good. Because normally I print every photo I took because that's how Instax works prior to this.
Hmm. Yeah.
What about
Cool.
you?
I so we went away this weekend. Oh, I oh, I can't. It's all
Oh,
fuzzy. There.
look at
Oh,
that.
almost. Get your head out of the way. It's is it out of focus? Because your hand's in focus, and the thing is not.
Oh, I wonder how that's possible.
I don't know how it's possible. There.
There we go.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Hey. Oh, almost. Yeah. Kind of. Okay.
It really doesn't want to focus. Sorry, folks.
No.
But
No.
we did take an Instax shot on the podcast. You
Okay.
can see my messy desk.
Cool.
These cables are doing.
That's
Sorry. You were
that's
saying?
um. So we went away for the weekend, and we
Right.
stayed at this amazing hotel. That's a Korean chain.
I like the way you said Korean.
Did I really? I was a
I
Korean
just,
chain. Um, but what was interesting is that when you go on, it's called Lotte
okay.
Hotels.
This is like worldwide famous. Yeah. Latte Hotels. There's an amazing one in New York.
So the founder of Lotte Hotels, what I think they said he watched or he read some German story, and that's where the name came from. And he started with like making bubble gum or something like that,
Right.
and then he got into hotels, and one of the earlier hotels, um, he built this or bought a hotel or built a hotel in places where not a lot of hotels are, and
Right.
so there is a hotel in Kazakhstan and Myanmar,
Interesting.
um, and apparently when he passed away, his kids were like fighting over the
Lotte brand.
fighting over what's left,
Right.
and so chaos. But the hotel itself was amazing,
Of course. Yeah, I've heard they're phenomenal.
amazing. Philip Stark design rooms, except
Ooh.
I don't know if it was Philip Stark designed for Lotte or Philip Stark designed for SLS hotels out of LA.
Right.
And then apparently at the last minute, SLS pulled out,
And looked at.
and then Lotte took over. And so I
Apparently
think
they did
that
in New York as well. It was like a refurb or something.
oh yeah, so uh they it's their hotel, and they opened like 10 days before the lockdown happened.
Oh,
But they were able to, stay afloat, and they've been open for, a few years now. And or they tried to open, and then that didn't work out. So because of the lockdown, I think they might have shut down and then
okay.
try to restart up a little bit later. But but we got it through our Chase card,
Mhm.
and when you book it through Chase points, you get like a $50 credit every day for breakfast, which
Nice.
doesn't cover breakfast,
Okay.
um, for two people, and $100 off, a dinner, which doesn't come close to covering dinner.
My
Um,
understanding is Lotte is pretty high on the
yeah,
list of premium hotels. Yeah.
the food was absolutely. I was thinking, well, we're gonna go to. We'll try the breakfast one day, but we'll go to a decent place.
Now I'm sitting on a joke here, but was the food all chocolate? You know, Lotte is like a big chocolate
Oh
company,
no,
right?
I don't
Oh
know
yeah,
that.
it's like the fifth largest chaebol in South Korea.
Oh really?
Anyway, they're well known
So
for chocolate candies. Yeah.
okay. Well, the food was so spectacular. The breakfast, I had this French toast that was. I mean, I make French. I can do French toast, but this, and I like getting French toast when I'm out, even at fancy places. I've never had French toast this good because of the candied walnuts on top and the
Mm.
fruit, and it was just like amazing. And then we had
Walnuts. That's a touch. Nice.
then for dinner, it was like a salt roasted beet salad
Mm.
and filet mignon. It wasn't crazy expensive, but I mean it wasn't cheap. The filet was $70.
Like,
Um,
that's a lot in Canadian. Yeah. That's
and and
$10 steak.
but we had a meal at when you're on Bainbridge and you go off the island. There's a casino right there,
Right.
and often in Vegas casinos you get food that's maybe a little bit cheaper because it's Vegas, and it's
Yep.
often really good, especially the
Yes.
really nice places.
Yes.
So we thought, well, maybe it's going to be the same. It's not, because that food was garbage, and it's about the same price as this $70
Might
fillet.
depend on how busy the casino is. I don't know. Possibly a factor.
And so, but this food was absolutely. The dessert was amazing. The drinks, the wines that we had were amazing. Um, and I mean, they gave us the bottle at the end, so to take to the room. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That sounds fantastic.
Amazing, and it was for somehow it was it ended up being like 180 a night or so for the two of us, and so
That,
very reasonable for Seattle, downtown Seattle.
yeah, I'm not gonna say affordable, but that sounds
Yeah, yeah.
reasonable for
So
sure.
it was great. Amazing
Fantastic.
hotel.
Yeah, I would definitely look into Lotte the brand. I know about
Yeah.
them because it was a Korean businessman in Japan, so it was kind of.
Mm,
I thought it was dual HQ for a bit, but now it's Korean owned. There's only a couple companies like that. Neighbor is another one that makes lime and
mm,
a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, it's I had to wiki it because I wasn't sure, but it's the fifth largest chaebol. Chaebol is like a Zaibatsu, but it's like a company that owns companies that own itself,
oh, okay.
like an Ouroboros. So it's a bunch of companies all sort of grouped together. One of them makes chocolate, so you'll find
Mm,
Topo, for example, is the Topo would be like oh shoot, I'm forgetting what are those long sticks? that people buy in Japan.
Oh,
That they,
I want to say Pixie, but that's not right.
it's
Uh,
it,
I know
Pocky,
that, and it's like Pocky.
Pocky.
Yeah,
Yes, it's like an equivalent to Pocky. That's actually quite good. Supple
yeah,
will often have like a you know just different flavors that are
yeah.
quite good. But yeah, uh, yeah, highly recommend Latte. Definitely look into the company. Pretty cool, and they do have that hotel in New York. I think it's if it's not the nicest hotel in New York, it's like second.
Yeah.
It's really up there, but Lotte apparently has amazing hotels.
In Seattle, for this level, there's two choices. It's basically the Lotte and the Fairmont.
I mean, yeah, I put in the
Yeah.
same conversation. Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you two
I
you did this prior to Valentine's Day. What's going on here? Because you knew the
well,
prices were going up.
so we met on February 10th,
Oh,
2013.
wow.
2013.
That's
And yeah, on that was the day after a big snowstorm in Boston. There was like 24 inches dumped overnight, and we met that the next day.
12 years. Time flies, hey?
Yeah, yeah. But hey, another unrelated thing.
All right.
We were talking about chocolate.
Yep.
I just mostly listened. I don't think I actually saw the episode. Um, there's a YouTuber, Colin and Samir,
Okay.
and they do interviews with pretty big YouTubers.
All right.
And one person they've had on a bunch of times is Mr. Beast. I
Uh-huh.
hate everything that guy ever makes. I
I
can't
think it's the
stand
smile. Something
I
feels
can't stand
disingenuine.
the videos he makes, and that whole Beast Games on. I mean, I
Yeah,
tried watching like 10 minutes. Like this is
I can't.
so bad. I can't watch it. Yet it's apparently
It's made for
popular.
children. Yeah, it's made for children.
Um, and but his other videos. I mean, they've been interesting because they kind of talk about the game of creating YouTube videos and how does he kind of try to game the system to make sure more people watch and that's interesting as somebody who creates videos.
Right.
But in the last one, they just interviewed him pretty recently. I think it was Colin Smear, and it was a lot of it was talking about the other businesses that he runs,
Oh,
and so it was actually pretty interesting. I mean, having just watched that games thing, it's like, oh
right,
my god, I can't. It just
right.
annoys me.
But as a
Um,
business, yeah, you could have
but
respect, right?
then he talked about the chocolate and apparently one of I don't know how true it. I assume it's true, but I don't know. He is the for ethically sourced chocolate. He is the number one producer in the U.S.
Right. And it turns out that there was
Which is
just a
interesting.
void. Yeah, there was just a void there,
Yeah,
and one he had channel deals apparently through doing was it the Ghost Kitchen restaurant kind of thing? Anyway, I don't. I should watch this interview. I
yeah.
didn't know too much about it, but to me as well, somebody threw that off as a fact, and I was like, how is that true? And then it turned out that just people don't care.
People don't care because I mean it's a whole lot
Like
cheaper
it just took one person.
if
Yeah,
you
one
buy
person doesn't really
chocolate
care.
and
Yeah,
a child actually picked the beans making
yeah,
20 cents
yeah.
when an adult will make $1. Well, it's cheaper to go with a kid.
Right.
And apparently they will because they actually source it through there's some other European maker of chocolate that has these big bars you get in fancy stores and uh, multicolor. I can't remember what it's called. Tony's, I think it's called. Um, and so they have a large. That's what they do as well. And so they just buy the cocoa from them. And so they kind of get it for while they're trying to build out their own system as well. They're buying it from them. Um, and but then they'll make sure that if a coffee produce as I understand it, if a coffee producer says I can produce this many pounds of beans for this amount, they'll figure out well how much does it really cost to do it right, and if the amount is more than what this person is saying, says we'll pay you more, but make sure that you're not hiring kids to do it,
Right.
and we'll help you increase your yield of chocolate from your land and bring in advisors to that. And so it was a very interesting story, an interesting coverage of this thing that I knew nothing about. I knew he was kind of involved with it, but
Right.
I mean, I've never seen it. I've never
Right.
seen it in a store. I don't know what it's like.
Apparently they sold it here. I just looked it up in like standard grocery stores, that kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
But I will say that was it something Donaldson? Jimmy Donaldson. I will say
Yeah.
Mr. Beast is in fact a pretty shrewd business
Yeah.
person, and like not liking somebody because of their smile is like one thing. As an
Yeah,
entertainer, not a big
the
fan,
whole needing
but
to like force a smile every time, that's a
yeah,
little weird.
yeah, it feels inauthentic. I think is the
Yeah.
issue. However, as a business person, yeah, it does seem to have some
He's
chops.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Can't argue with this. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
For
collect
somebody
$5
who's
million
never had a
and
job.
give it away. Yeah, exactly. Definitely understand stuff for sure.
Yeah, I who else? There was there was a interview with Mark Manson, and the one who did uh without giving a fuck or something like that. There was a
Oh,
like a
subtle art.
huh?
The subtle art of not giving enough.
Yeah, that's it. That guy. What's his name?
Mark Manson. Good
Mark
call.
Manson. Okay, it was.
Good call. Good
Um,
call. I own that book. I have read maybe a paragraph or two. I've definitely read the Wikipedia summary.
there was an interview with him pretty recently with another YouTube kind of advice giver,
Okay.
Dan Klaus, I think is the guy's name. And I mean, and he was it's interesting how so many of these YouTubers, when he tries to hire people to join his team, so he's got 15 full-time people
Okay.
building content or working with them to build content. And he will hire people, often having those people will have worked in the past for some of the biggest YouTubers,
Hmm.
and their questions will be like, when it's at the end of the interview, it's like, well, do you have any questions for me? It's like, what do you do about, do you pay taxes? It's like, how do you not know this? How, how can you work for, some of these biggest YouTubers and not know like
Deep
basic
breath.
business things? And,
Yeah.
these people have no idea of like sales funnels and because none of
Yeah.
these people have ever worked. They've all been they've all the YouTuber, he's like starts making YouTube videos in high school, and that becomes their only job, and now they've had no real experience, but they're building these
Right.
empires essentially, and then trying to do these people have just no knowledge about how the world works.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, which
so that was also pretty interesting.
it
This
feels
interview with
increasingly common, but I also know
yeah,
that I'm getting older, and
yeah,
as I get older, it feels like it's more common. But there does seem to be that I don't know, like I'll meet photographers who say they're making money, and then and again, much love to them, but they don't realize how much buying new gear will
hmm
take in terms of just to pay off. Like it takes a long
hmm
time. I mean, photography is kind of a money losing operation at this point.
yeah,
So I'm always surprised when someone says they're making money, but they don't understand how to do. Like you're rolling average. Like, are you in the black or are you in the red? Like, if you're
right,
not reading it down, you don't know. And it's kind of like, just do a quick pulse check.
yeah,
I think I'm doing all right, kind of thing. Like, this is not how
yeah,
businesses work. Like, there's a clear set of principles that you can follow. Anyway, I would agree. It
yeah,
does seem to be not common for someone to come in with actual business knowledge and
yeah,
understand the channel that they're part of and leverage that same channel for
right,
one thing to leverage for something else. Be it
yeah. I mean, so
food,
he
nice
was
coffee, and then
all into it, not wanting to take advertisers anymore because they're just too much work,
right,
and really focus on using YouTube to help push people through the funnel to the newsletter and to his own products. And it's all this, and actually that was another interesting thing about that Mr. Beast video or interview was how all the video content. So even the Beast games
hmm
and the YouTube content is all feeding people through to understand Feastables is because he lost money on the Beast games, and he loses money on every video, but he
really,
makes
I
a
thought it was the opposite.
ton
Oh,
on Feastables.
the business model's changed a bit. Then I probably should watch this.
Well, no,
I do find these
I
quite shrewd.
And so I think some other list I saw, some other article listed him as youngest billionaire, or I don't know if he's at that level yet, but the there's some lunch product that he does, and as well as this chocolate, and that is where the profit is for
Is that
him.
not the Feastables
Maybe
as
that's
opposed to Lunchables?
Lunchables. I
Oh
don't
no,
know.
Feastables is the chocolate.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was Lunchable. Yeah, Lunchly.
yeah, and then there's also the
Yeah, and there's some controversy about it because they accused
yeah, yeah.
cheese and stuff. But
It's
yeah, my
not very
understanding
good,
is
and there's some like energy drink or something that
yeah.
it's also some scammy thing. But anyway,
And I've had a Mr. Beast burger. It was not great, but again,
yeah.
it's those kitchen potters, so it
But
probably goes.
it's all so all the videos are a funnel to
Right.
those things, and that's what makes the money. And he loses. I I think one interview I'd seen, like a video will generate $1 million, and he will use 1,100,000 on the next video,
Hmm.
and so he's always losing on every
So,
video.
and just quickly, just spitballing a brand idea here. So we get Mr. Beast is the channel, and Feastables is the thing. So I'm thinking like get Technovangelist, right? So like Mr. Techno, and what would the Mr. Techno Lunchables look like? 'Cause as far as I can tell, it's going to be filet mignon. And
Crepes,
no, sorry, and breakfast is French toast.
French toast, yeah, yeah.
It's the
Yeah,
premium dining experience.
yeah. I need to come up with a way to keep that fillet still juicy and good and tender in the lunchbox, because it's for kids' lunches, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The, for the discerning child,
discerning child. Yes, perfect.
I love it. But yeah, if this is the tip of your spear, the top of your funnel, I mean, we
That's
gotta
right. That's right.
gotta start selling what is it, cursor referrals or something? Win referrals. Uh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we're a bit over, so I
I
should
think
probably
we're over.
close. This is awesome. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
all the
thank
comments,
you.
folks. This has been
Yeah,
super fun.
this has been fun. I tried Rust, but couldn't say. Oh, there was somebody. There was another question at the beginning from Neil asking about what software we're using.
Oh, shoot, I missed that. Sorry.
What live broadcasting software do you
Oh,
use?
yes.
And so we've gone through a number of things. Initially we were using, what was that?
Lives, Riverside FM.
Well,
Is that
there
right?
there was Riverside for a while, and it was terrible.
Stream.
Um,
I think is what we started with.
StreamYard. StreamYard was the first one because you were already using it. I thought, sure. Um, and so we did StreamYard, then Riverside. Riverside
It was all
had
right.
some more tools on the back end, but the quality was just
It was bad.
awful.
Yeah.
And then I switched to I'm now using Ecamm, and it's been great.
Surprisingly okay. I wouldn't say it's
If
as full featured, but the quality is good.
yeah, quality is great. If Ryan could show up without the noise on his line, it'd be awesome.
I'm working on it.
But yeah, I don't see any other questions. So
Awesome. Thank you so
awesome.
much. That was
Thank
great.
you. All right, I'm gonna find that finish button.
All right.
All right.